What's some things that we need to know about the first week of the Dallas Mavericks schedule as we look at what was going to be their longest homestand of the season to kick off the year? 5 straight games at the American Airlines Center, Bobby Curla. What do we need to know about the first week of the Mavericks schedule?
You got to get off to a good start. So Mavs have 5 of their first 5 games at home, 13 of their first 18 games at home. Their first 10 games are based on last year's records and this year's kind of projections that we have for these teams. A relatively friendly stretch of schedule. So you want to rack up as many wins as possible. Obviously, you want to win all the time, but later in the season, especially, from early to mid-February through really the end of March, it's a lot of road games against a lot of really good teams. Their schedule around Thanksgiving and into early December is very, very difficult, also featuring a lot of road games. And so the beginning of the season is when you can make your hay. And so I decided, hey, I talk about this every freaking year, why getting off to such a good start is really, really important. And so I decided to put some numbers behind it. And so I looked back at NBA history. This goes all the way back to 1946, 47, thanks to our friends at StatHead, Basketball Reference. Based on how many games you win out of your first 10, how likely are you to make the playoffs?
Okay.
And so the magic number is really 7 games. If you go 7-3 or better all time, there have been 403 instances in NBA history of teams starting the season at least 7-3. 92.3% of them have gone on to make the playoffs.
Okay.
And that spans many different playoff formats. So we're talking about an era whenever only 4 teams from each conference made it. I think there was a time when only 4 teams, period, made it. Now, obviously, 10 teams make it, but making the play-in does not count. So it's really just the top 6 or the teams that survive the play-in. The most recent example of a team starting 7-3 or better that did not make the playoffs, by the way, was the Phoenix Suns, who did it last year.
Nanny, nanny, boo, boo.
If you win 6 out of your first 10, 72.7% of teams all time have done that. 218 out of 300. The Sacramento Kings actually started 6-4 last year, and they did not make the playoffs, thanks to the Mavs, actually. If you start 5-5, you have a 61.6% chance of making it. If you start 4-6, you only have a 44% chance of making it, and down we go. Now, there have been in recent seasons some teams that got off to horrific starts, including the Clippers in 23-24. They started 3-7. They're one of only 44 teams to ever make it. The Bucks last season started 2-8. They're one of only 19 teams to ever make the playoffs, starting 2-8.
Wow.
And then the Pelicans in 21-22, they started 1-9, and they rallied all the way back to make the playoffs. They're one of only 5 teams ever to make the playoffs that started 1-9. And then only one team ever has started 0-10 and gone on to make the playoffs. That was the Suns back in 1991-92. So it really, it's much like it's a first quarter league. The team that's ahead at the end of the first quarter wins like 70% of games, even still with all the comebacks we have. It is a first 10 games league. If you get off to a good start, you're making the playoffs. If you don't, you're probably not.
What if a team started 0-4? Would they ever make the playoffs or win 67 games?
I wouldn't know because they canceled the playoffs that year.
Okay.
Famously.
Yeah, but
theoretically
still qualified for
one
it.
could, yeah.
What
So that
season
Mavs
are you
team-
talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
The 06-07 Mavs started 0-4, but
I didn't know that.
they actually
Okay, so that's an answer to my
they
question.
actually started 6-4.
Right.
Got it. There you go.
Yeah.
Mavs' last final run started 8-2.
Got off to a great start.
Got up to a great start. Of course, their first 5 games this year at the American Airlines Center versus San Antonio, the Washington Wizards, the Toronto Raptors, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Indiana Pacers. And then they go to Mexico City when they take on the Detroit Pistons. So you go through those first 6 games, and then the next 4 include at Houston versus New Orleans, and then on the road against Memphis and Washington as your first 10 games. So you get the Washington Wizards twice in your first 10 games if you're the Dallas Mavericks. So an opportunity to be able to get yourself off to that kind of start that you're needing to if you're Dallas. And
Maybe.
Washington, we think, will be a little bit better because they have a little bit more competency in terms of some of the guys that are on their team now. So they should be at least
CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton.
Yeah, they should at least be watchable this upcoming season as far as the Wizards are concerned.
It is always tricky playing those awful teams, no disrespect, early in the year because they still think like
they got a shot.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought your stats were really cool, Bobby. I like them. They made sense to me.
Luckily, like StatHead has literally, they give you the entire list of teams, and then you can click on them and see their season and why they started so poorly. Like a team starts 3-7 but goes on to win 54 games. Oh yeah, it's because their best player was hurt.
That's right.
Or whatever the case is. So there's usually explanations for it, and I think that's a really important thing too. Like, don't just
context is important.
Context matters for one individual thing, but over many years, like in the 7-3 or better club is 403 teams. I'm sure there's a team that started great and then their best player got hurt. But like for the most part, if the Mavs start 7-3, they're going to make the playoffs.
Of those 10 games that we mentioned, Spurs, Wizards, Raptors, Thunder, Pacers, Pistons, Rockets, New Orleans, Memphis, and the Wizards again. What do you think the record would be after the first 10 games?
I think we did this once you hopped off on the schedule show.
You did the first 10 games?
Yeah.
Tim and I had them pretty much their first 5 games, that 5-game homestand. We got them going, an optimist would say 4-1. You can beat all the teams. Maybe you even beat OKC, but you're probably not starting 5-0. It's just really tough. You're like winning 5 in a row in the NBA is hard. So optimistically 4-1. Split Detroit and Houston. So that's a nice 5-2. Beat the Pelicans. That's a 6-2. Maybe you split with Memphis and Washington.
Okay.
Because that's a back-to-back, so that could be a nice 7-3. And then you get the Bucks and the Suns. That's going to be tough. Maybe you win both of those games. Maybe you split those. So that could be.
I think 4-1 in the opening 5-game homestand is
that would be
very optimistic.
Yeah,
as well.
That is it's super optimistic.
Yeah.
But if you win 4 out of every 5 games over the course of a season, that's what
the 800 winning percentage.
Yeah, that's like almost a. I don't know what it is. I can't do that.
It's literally
4 or 5.
It's like 65 win season or something.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to do that. So even if you're playing a bunch of cellar dwellers, I know Eastern Conference playoff teams do this all the time. You just get to play a bunch of horrible teams all the time.
That's how the Bucks. What did you say? Went 2-8 last year, and
and then they went on. Yeah, because they played Eastern. I did this on the show.
Yeah,
their next 30 games were all against the East, and I was like, on Christmas they're going to be in 3rd place, and they were.
Yeah.
Now the Mavs do get a bunch of bad teams right off the rip, but then. At Memphis is tough. I don't care what Memphis's record is at the end of the year. It's tough. At Washington, second night of a back-to-back is tough. The Bucks, the Mavs might finish with a better record than the Bucks this year, but it's still tough to face Giannis.
Sure.
So, like, all of these games are closer to coin flips than I think they are. I wouldn't start counting your chickens. But, again, it's important to start off hot because right after that, starting on November 14th, which is Game 11, it's Clippers, Blazers, Wolves, Knicks, and then it's Pelicans, Grizzlies, Heat. Okay, but then it's Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Heat, Thunder, Rockets. Like, oh my God. It gets the second 10 games are super tough.
Within their first month of the season, which begins October 22nd, they have a 5-game homestand to start off the season with, and then a 4-game homestand, which includes the Bucks, Suns, Clippers, and Portland Trailblazers. So having multiple homestands of at least 4 games or more within the first month of the season is a pretty good way to start off your season if you're the Dallas Mavericks. Hopefully they can take advantage of that given how the schedule
is. You know what that means?
What's that?
That means there's a lot of road stands.
There's a lot. There will be a lot of road games as the end of the season nears.
Hopefully Kyrie's back for those.
Yes.
Winning on the road in this league is super duper duper tough.
It's going to be very tough for sure.